Welcome back to my channel. Let's start the game.
Okay, let's go.
The Curious Case of the Conjugating Cactus. Professor Quentin Quibble, a botanist whose eccentricity bloomed brighter than any of his prize-winning petunias, had a secret. Not a scandalous secret, mind you, like a secret love affair with a rare Amazonian orchid. No, Professor Quibble's secret was far more grammatical. His prize-winning saguaro cactus, Bartholomew had learned to conjugate verbs. It started subtly. Professor Quibble, while meticulously dusting Bartholomew's spines, a task he approached with the reverence one might reserve for polishing crown jewels, would often mutter grammatical paradigms. I am, you are, he, she, it is, he'd drone, more to himself than the stoic succulent. One Tuesday, while Professor Quibble was lamenting the irregular verbs in ancient Aramaic, he distinctly heard a low, gravelly voice say, "Indeed, to be is to be." Professor Quibble nearly upended his watering can. He looked around his cluttered laboratory, filled with bubbling beakers and the faint scent of formaldehyde. Bartholomew stood silently in his terracotta pot, looking as prickly and unconcerned as ever. Had he imagined it? The next day, Professor Quibble tested his theory. "I walk," he announced to Bartholomew. A moment of silence. Then, a dry, rustling sound, followed by, "You walk." Professor Quibble's monocle nearly popped out of his eye. He tried again, his voice trembling with a mixture of disbelief and scholarly excitement.
"He walks."
"He walks," Bartholomew confirmed, his voice sounding remarkably like a desert wind whispering through dry leaves. News of the conjugating cactus spread through the university, like wildfire after a particularly spicy chili cook-off. Skeptical colleagues trooped into Professor Quibble's lab, armed with furrowed brows and thinly veiled accusations of lunacy. Professor Quibble would proudly present Bartholomew. "Observe," he'd declare. "I ate." Silence. "You eat," Bartholomew would eventually rumble, seemingly on his own prickly schedule. The skeptics remained unconvinced. "It's a trick!" Professor Fitzwilliam, the head of the zoology department, and a man who believed anything that didn't have fur or feathers was inherently untrustworthy, declared loudly. "The old fool's got a ventriloquist hiding behind the potted ferns." Professor Quibble, deeply offended, challenged Professor Fitzwilliam. "Very well, Fitzwilliam. You try." Professor Fitzwilliam huffed. He cleared his throat and glared at Bartholomew. I hibernate," he blurted out, thinking he'd stumped the botanical oddity with a decidedly animal verb. A long, suspenseful silence filled the room. Then Bartholomew's gravelly voice echoed, "You attempt to hibernate. Poorly." The room erupted in laughter. Even Professor Fitzwilliam couldn't suppress a chuckle. Bartholomew's linguistic talents became a campus sensation. Students would visit, eager to test his grammatical prowess. He conjugated everything from to photosynthesize to procrastinate. His responses were often dryly witty. When one particularly lazy student mumbled, "I study," Bartholomew retorted. Doubtful. The university considered writing Bartholomew into the faculty directory under Department of Botanical Linguistics. However, Bartholomew politely declined the honor, stating, through Professor Quibble, of course, "I prefer to remain rooted in my current position." One day, a renowned linguist from Oxford visited Professor Quibble's lab. He spent hours analyzing Bartholomew's conjugations, recording his gravelly pronouncements. Finally, he declared, "This cactus, it doesn't just conjugate, it understands the nuances of tense and aspect. It even seems to grasp sarcasm." Professor Quibble beamed. "Indeed." "Just last week I said, I enjoy Mondays," and Bartholomew replied, "With what I can only describe as botanical disdain, questionable." Bartholomew's fame grew. He was featured in botanical journals and even received fan mail, mostly postcards with pictures of sunny deserts. But through it all, he remained a stoic, prickly presence in Professor Quibble's lab, occasionally gracing visitors with a perfectly conjugated verb and a healthy dose of botanical sass. And Professor Quibble, he just continued to dust Bartholomew's spines, a proud father to the world's only known conjugating cactus, forever in awe of his grammatically gifted green friend.
Tralalero, tralala, tralalero,